Okay. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the meeting of the Smith Falls Police Services Board for Tuesday, July 15th, 2025. I will call the meeting to order and start with our land acknowledgement. On July 15th, 2025, acknowledge that sacred land on which Smith Falls is now located has been a site of human activity for over 10,000 years in its rich and indigenous history. This land is the ancestral and unceded territory of the Algonquin Anishinaabe Nation. We're grateful to the Algonquin ancestors who cared for the land and water in order that we might be here today. We're also grateful to the Algonquin people for their contribution in the making of the Rideau Canal, which runs through Smith Falls. We're mindful of broken covenants and the need to reconcile with all our relations. Together, may we care for this land and each other, drawing on the strength of our mutual history of nation building through peace and friendship, and being mindful of generations to come. I have no remarks myself today, other than since our last board meeting, we've had numerous community activities from Canada Day and powwow and bike nights and all kinds of stuff happening, and just want to acknowledge police presence and interaction. Go back to powwow and our community service officer Sean Keoghan interacting with some of the young Indigenous youth, and one in particular I think who really stole your heart during powwow, but had a lot of fun. But just the interactions were so positive in so many ways from members of the police service. So thank you for being there, and thank you for the interactions and supporting our community.
Absolutely. It was a great weekend, and I got a lot of compliments about Officer Keoghan as well, and how his positive engagement, and that's part of reconciliation, of course, with police services. So I know that he was commended for his spent all weekend there. And Ashley Ferrier, our special constable, she is Indigenous as well, and she was very proud to carry the flag for the powwow and represent our police service for the weekend. It was hot, I guess, but a lot of fun.
It was a great day.
Yeah, it was a great day. Lots of people. It was great to see it back in our community for sure. Yeah.
And Chief, you have a few remarks yourself and introductions, I believe.
I do. I just wanted to introduce the board to our youth and policing students, the successful candidates. It was a really difficult choice to make. I know Sean and Officer Derek Dewey was part of the recruiting team and doing the interviews. We had to move fast. So again, I commend Constable Keoghan and Staff Sergeant Wilson, because I had told them that I applied for this grant, but of course with government, sometimes you don't hear till the very last minute. And I didn't hear that we were successful until June. So we had to move quickly. And Sean's been, and so has the Staff Sergeant, to put them out through the town and seeing what we need, being there for Movies Under the Stars. They're going to go to Ottawa next week to do some training with the IPI students with Ottawa Police. They're going to do some training with Brockville and Gananoque, see a side of policing that people don't normally see, part of training. And then there's a big event, is it Toronto or?
It's Durham.
Durham. For Yippie students across Ontario that they're going to go to for the day. So a lot of positive engagement. We've done the reach out, but just starting out this year, we're just trying to figure out where they are needed and what we could use them for. And certainly have been a big help to us inside the office area and our space. Cleaned out our garage, cleaning out some of our space, and they're organizing a fundraiser as well. And I hear it's with the food bank. So I just wanted to introduce you to, there's Emily, there's Eva, Jacob, and Ray Lynn.
Should we maybe have them come up so the camera can see them and
come on up.
Be present for the community while you're doing the introductions.
We're on camera.
And movie stars.
This is our police services board.
I'll get you around the other side.
So also at the end, they're going to do a little graduation we're going to have for them, and they're going to do a PowerPoint presentation on everything that they've done. They helped out as well at Canada Day festivities. They're going to help a lot with Old Home Week and RibFest, I believe, too, and any other events that between now and August. So the week of August 18th and 22nd is their last day. So we were going to do something at the police station at the board, and we're hoping that one or two board members are able to attend just to present them with certificates and see their PowerPoint and all the hard work that they've done in a fundraiser. So after we'll pick a date and see what's good for the board or whoever's available. I know it's August and holiday time, but we'll see. So they're
Joe, who do we
very
have?
keen.
We don't know their names.
Emily's here.
Emily's here. Hi, Emily.
Eva, Jacob, Raylan. Oh, Kaylin, I'm sorry. Kaylin, yeah. See, me, my name's Kaylin.
And they're great softball players too. We played community living folks last week, and yeah, I think you guys really enjoyed that. Eh? Great,
Yeah.
thank you.
And Kaylin's going into police foundations, right? And can't remember where. Loyalist. Yeah. So she wants to be a police officer. They all have interests in policing somewhat. Emily, I don't know, Emily, if you want to share your story or not. It's up to you.
My family's been through like a lot of trauma and everything the past couple of years, and the community and everything has gave back to us in so many ways I can't even describe. So I joined this program and everything just so I could help out around the community and give back to everyone who gave back to me.
Do you want to tell them who your mom was?
My mom was Chantel Lebrun.
Yeah. And Eva, why did you join?
I just want the easier step to become military, please.
Jacob?
Just gotta help out as best as I can and also learn a lot about policing while doing so.
I just love working with people and in the community and volunteering a lot. And it was a really good step into the policing world when I don't have a lot of experience in yet as I'm going into school.
Yeah, they did really well in the interviews, and I've actually heard personally from teachers that taught all 4 of them and spoke highly of them as well. So we know that they'll have a great summer, and we'll find them stuff to do. But it's a great program, and once we have it, my understanding is we don't lose it. So hopefully we'll be more prepared next year and get things organized in advance. And kudos to Sean and Nadine because they really stepped up and gave up their time off. And I know a lot of summertime is, to take up. They've helped out at the food hub and the food bank. So, they'll help out wherever they can. The community just needs to reach out to Constable Keogan and we'll find them work.
Excellent. Well, and I've seen them interacting with the public in numerous places already, and doing a great job of representing our community in the service.
Yeah,
So,
absolutely. Yeah.
Well done.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you.
I just want to add that they've been such a great addition, not just to the police service, but to the community and their ability to access everybody. They've been engaged with the food hub, our adult community living groups, playing ball. They've been out doing the Lock It and Lose It campaign. They've been in our local businesses, updating our key holder lists. Managers and what have you change with alarm companies, so having updated information is paramount. As part of that, they've been finding out with the local businesses who has CCTV for another program that we're in the process of launching. It's the CamSafe program, so it'll be make the community safer as a whole. And we've got their efforts being out there every day, representing the service, representing the town, and representing the community. So I love the work that they've done so far, and they should be commended for it.
Mhm.
Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you.
And the association and the service are going to sponsor Movies Under the Stars on August 21st. So we'll play a big part in that night especially, but they're going to be there every Thursday night. So yeah.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Great initiative. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, any additions to the agenda? Seeing none, any declaration of interest? No, so I'm going to need a motion moving camera. The Smiths Falls Police Service Board moving camera to discuss items pertaining to financial or personal matters or other matters may be disclosed of such a nature, have regard to the circumstances of the desirability of avoiding their disclosure in the interest of any person affected or in the public interest outweighs the desirability of adhering to the principle that proceedings will be open to the public in accordance with Section 44 of the Community Safety and Policing Act. Motion moving camera moved by Rob, seconded by Chris. All in favor? We're going to be probably an hour
like having the personal.
Thank everyone for your patience. We're back from our in-camera session. Next piece of business, we have no correspondence. Look for consideration of minutes from the previous meeting. Approval of the minutes, moved by Rob, seconded by Chris. All in favor? That's carried. Business arising from the previous meeting, the new proposed community support recognition policy. Hope everyone had a chance to review that.
Sorry,
Oh,
looking at my computer.
okay. So essentially, it's the use of proceeds of crime.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that the policy has been drafted. We've had a chance to review it. The only comments, I think we had comments last meeting. I think it was Andrew that brought it up, or maybe it's since then. That just come to that they come to the board for approval. It was the only change.
Yeah, so if you look at number 6 on the funds approval, the delegated authority, it just indicates the chief of police is authorized to approve disbursements with board approval on the amount seized from property of crime every 2 years. So there's no dollar amount, to be honest. It's going to be fairly significantly less than what we gave away last year because the property room hadn't been cleaned out in a while, but we're sticking to the policy to do it every 2 years. So you're going to see less money to be dispersed, but then it's just, here's the amount and the board to approve it on your policy.
Chris?
I was wondering, so for fund priorities, if we just allocated the funds to victim services, where victim services seems to be chronically underfunded, proceeds of crime are directly related to victim services work, and then it would save we can just allocate whatever that money is each year, and then they can count on some stable funding.
Thoughts? My thought, I'm not sure we want to limit ourselves to one option or prejudge what, I mean, if funding changed for them in the future by the province, then maybe we would want to go elsewhere. But I think it's certainly one that would justify the support. I just wouldn't want to sort of put ourselves into that one focus, my personal feeling. Yeah.
I guess just I don't see the way the province seems to be cutting back more than funding. You know, if that changes and they get sustainable funding, great, change the policy. But I just, yeah, in my head, it's nice to give stuff to different community groups, but that's the group that is the most directly related to where the proceeds came from.
I don't disagree with that part. Yeah.
Yeah.
Chief,
If I could just top up on that, the victim support grant, year 1, victim services didn't want to engage in that grant. I had to, I reached out to other partners for that grant. So we have victim advocate that has embedded herself into our police service once a week to support victims of violence, especially intimate partner violence, and being on the front line. So that funding went to victim advocate, which works out of Lanark County Integral House. But year 2 and 3 just got announced. So we put it out again to our victim services partners, and yeah, so.
Rob?
No, I think this is the uncertainty of what it is each year. You can certainly prioritize a group, but in fairness to those other groups that we've been able to give money, it would be nice to have the option to give it because things could change where they could get a grant.
Yeah.
At least this way, there's a decision that can be made by the board in support of the chief and whatever, that we can put it where we think it's best needed each couple of years when it comes out. Because I think we got 20,000 last year, Jode was.
Yeah, you won't see that.
We won't see that again because of the cleanup. Like it could be, I think in years past, it's only been like 4 or 5, somewhere around that area. So certainly the decisions I think are made on a case by case, and we can prioritize which ones we feel need it best, but it's nice to be able to help the entire community as a whole.
Thoughts?
I'm good.
Whichever way we want to go.
Okay,
Sure. So is there a motion to approve the bylaw as proposed? You want to move that?
I can push that.
Rob? I'll second. Chris?
I'll just clarify for what,
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. All
Yeah.
in favor then? Okay. Thank you.
So that gets sent to council?
No.
No, it's just the board. We'll include it in, it's part of your policies.
Not a town,
No.
just
No,
a
it's a board. Okay, Chief Budget Monitor for June.
Okay. So I had notified the board of a collision on one of our cruisers. 108 was involved in a collision. It was a traffic stop. The officer was about to exit his vehicle and the truck reversed and slammed into the front of the cruiser and fled through a fence, damaged a fence, and the officer did not pursue. However, the front of the vehicle was quite damaged. Through investigation, though, the officer was able to obtain information on the vehicle. Even though the vehicle hasn't been located, the ownership, insurance, the plate, everything else was located, and the person was charged with a number of offenses and held for bail. I put the claim through our insurance. I don't know if the board's aware, they probably are, that our deductible is $10,000, but because we have somebody who's named and we have a registered owner of that truck, we're only going to be responsible for $300 for that damage. So kudos to them to get this solved quickly. But I'm thankful that the officer wasn't injured, because it was quite an impact on the video to see that. And good on him. He's a very proactive officer around some of our drug houses. And this was a particular drug house that he was stopping this truck with unauthorized plates, no insurance, no doubt, and a number of other things. But because the insurance company is able to go after the registered owner of the truck, our deductible will just be $300. The damage alone for the body was over 13, and then there's a lot of engine-related repairs that need to be done. So they're probably looking at over $20,000 in damage, but again, our deductible is $300 for that. So there's not a significant cost to our budget line. The vehicle is in. It's being upgraded with the radios and lighting and everything else. As I mentioned to the board before, it's over the budget that we had allocated, because initially we weren't going to go with a vehicle this year. We decided with the board's permission that we would go ahead with the vehicle purchase. However, the other descriptions in our capital line are well under budget, so there's going to be an increase in our vehicle, as I've mentioned before, but it's not going to do anything on the capital lines altogether, because other things are quite under budget, or we hold off on purchasing some things to make sure that the vehicle is paid for in the capital line that doesn't have any increase to the capital. As mentioned before, NG 911 is, they're progressing along with Owen Sound and the implementation there, but as a whole, it's been put on hold to 2027. However, they've announced, it hasn't come out yet, but there is going to be a year 4 grant application, because there's some training portion that we had applied for year 3, but weren't able to utilize it because they've been so delayed. And it's all because of Bell Canada. So I'm hoping this isn't going to be a nightmare, this NG 911, but maybe I'll be retired by then. But it's a beast, and it seems to be a long drawn out thing with Bell Canada. But as far as the rest of our budget, I compared to June of last year, same time. Our salary recover, we're about $57,000 higher than we were last year. So that's more in our salary recovery line. The overtime is about $28,000 less than it was this year, last year. So we're riding, even though it's going up, of course, as you know, I dropped the budget line for that, but there's no guarantee that we're going to hold the line, because we just don't know what comes up. There's illnesses, there's vacation, there's major cases, major crimes that, and of course we're dealing with a major case of a missing person that we have dedicated resources to that. So that does include overtime as well. But other than that, complex maintenance line is high, but we've had to, there was a lot of heating and air conditioning work that needed to be done on the place. That's been rectified. And I think that was it for complex maintenance, but that was one of the things that we had to deal with. And there was one more, that travel is, you'll see, is high on our budget line. So travel has to do with officers going for courses and training. However, the victim support grant, I allocated training, at least $10,000 I was able to get for that year one. So that's going to be in our pocket. So that takes away from the travel portion, because I can claim travel and expenses, hotels to go to these courses, because that does add up and it gets expensive. Everything else is under budget, and there's no other issues as far as letting the board know of anything major, unless there's any questions.
Questions or comments?
Dr. B?
Thanks for the update. Next up is our board policies and procedures. So grateful to the staff who have drafted I guess 90 different policies and procedures that were distributed to us in recent weeks. Hoping we've had a chance to review them all completely. Now we know this is a bit of a moving target, and it's probably over 90%, 95% of the policy procedures that we'll have to have in place. There may be a few more which may emerge as the chief goes through the act and learns there may be more that are required. Hopefully not, but I'm sure it's possible. It's certainly a possibility. So just for the public's, I guess, consumption, so we've had a policies and procedure manual, which around since I think 2000. The new CSPA has required us to update all our policies and procedures. Many of them relate to activities of the police service and essentially direction to the chief to ensure she has policies in place related to a multitude of things, from everything related to the whole police service, from, I guess, major incidents to drug enforcement to everything you can imagine. So I guess we hope everyone's had a chance to go deeply into this. I didn't finish them until about 10:30 last night, so I'm not sure everyone else had a chance to go through them all. If you haven't, we can postpone approval to our next meeting. If you have gone through them all, we could deal with it today. So Rob.
I think we should postpone it because there is a chance of a different template. Is that?
Yeah, I think there's more coming for the board, because every time when we're implementing policies, then you've got to connect with the board policies. So there continues to be more. So I think it's a smart idea to put it to the next meeting to make sure that all of them are in place, or at least for your review. It's a lot, and there's policies that the police service never had that has to be implemented. There's over 80 policies and regulations that are new on top of ensuring that all the adequacy standards are met under the Act. So it is quite an undertaking, and certainly with the board and the police service, being myself, the chief, to make sure that our policies are all in line. So we're 90% there. And so I think it's a smart idea to put it over and making sure that everybody has had a chance to review your policies and making sure there's no errors, of course, and you can sign off on them, and just making sure that they're all there. So,
Chris?
Yeah.
I'm wondering, are we planning to go through them one by one, or are we planning to approve them all in one shot, or?
I would think we'd have to, if we're going to go through them one by one, it will take a week or some amount of time.
Yeah.
But my preference would be everyone confirms that they have gone through them all, understands them all. If we have any questions related to any individual policy, then bring that forward for our next meeting. And we can discuss that one individual policy. And I know that a couple of typos, right? In some of them I recognize.
Yeah.
I had some questions related to some of them.
Yeah.
But so I think ideally we come back in our meeting in September prepared to go over, to pull out anyone you want to pull out and review, then we'll do it at that time. Does that seem reasonable?
Yeah, and I guess just from a formatting and with the new act, a lot of these policies, like say the acoustic hailing policy.
Yeah, I wonder what that is.
basically
What sort of acoustic
that
hailing device?
devices will be used in accordance with the procedure, and the procedure will be in accordance with the regulation.
Yeah.
And they're not really, like, I get that the act is giving us the need for all of this, but I don't know if it's something we can talk to Graham or somebody at the I don't know who the right person to talk to, but it just seems silly to have 100 policies and a lot of them are just reference the reg, right?
Yeah, so it's okay because you have to have those policies, but then those other regulations will be, so say for example, that you had a major incident. So you put in your incident command team. So do we use, if we utilize Kingston, we use other services for high risk or the OPP because we still have the old agreement with the OPP when it comes to hostage negotiations, who'd have the, acoustic hailing devices. But if it's something we need, which is something that is in the act, then we look at, do we need it? Or when we reach out to, whether it's ERT or TRUE teams, for example, that have it, that is sufficient under the act. And it is sufficient because we have the Section 14 agreement. So yes, you have to have it in your policy, but then in the regulations and as you go forward in the chief's policy, it indicates what we do and how we manage those things, for example. Yeah.
Now, numerous policies trigger a reference, certainly an annual report from the chief.
Yes. Yep.
So maybe for the next meeting, if you can have a list of those and the milestones, just so we understand going forward what we would have and when we would have it.
The annual report?
No, there's numerous reportings required through the.
Yeah. So the annual report was done in April.
Yes.
Yeah, and that was public and on.
I know
Yeah.
a lot of the policy procedures reference a need for an annual reporting on another item.
Yeah. Yeah, the report back by August 30th. Yeah, of each year.
Yeah,
So,
there's a few different, so there's
Yep.
a few of them that are required,
Yep.
just so we're
Yeah.
prepared for those.
Yep.
Now, I assume some of those will come forward in September anyway. Well,
Yeah.
yeah, because we're
Yeah.
not meeting in August.
Yeah. No, those will be done before like we're July. So yeah, the reporting will be done by August. So the board is to have in writing a report from the chief on a lot of policies to indicate to the board that yes, we're in compliance with the act, whether it's to do with note taking. And there's a number of policies that I have to report to that will be done. Yeah, and I'll just attach it to the next meeting. But I'll make sure the board gets it before the deadline of August 30th, and then you have it, so we could.
It shows several different months all throughout the whole thing. There's June,
Yeah,
one of them
yeah.
was the end of June and.
Yep, that was the annual report. Yeah.
Oh,
Yep.
So it's just,
Yeah.
it's just having that cataloged for future reference.
Yep.
Chris?
Some of the policies, like the accessibility policy and some of the policies deal with Indigenous issues. Is there any benefit of sending those to stakeholders for some comment or feedback or consultation?
Accessibility could go to the town's accessibility advisory committee just for some feedback.
It is a standardized policy, board policies across the province for boards to make sure you're complying with the act. Yeah, yeah. That is standardized, yeah.
Okay, so if no other comments or questions right now, then we'll work behind the scenes, updating on those, making sure that hopefully by September we've got them all. And worst case scenario, if we approve in September, we may need to amend in the future if another policy or procedure emerges based on the regulations as they continue to roll out. Okay, thank you. Moving on. Anything further on the youth and initiative?
Yeah, sorry, I had it on as new business, just to remind myself, but I mentioned at the very beginning a student graduation, so I didn't know, I know we don't have a meeting in August, so I didn't know if there was a board member or two that would come to the grad, and if you knew of a time or day that would be suitable. Anywhere between the 18th and the 22nd for Sean to arrange that, and I don't know if you knew now or if you want to get back to.
Send that out. I think I'm away.
Sure.
I have an email conference that week,
Yeah, no problem.
but if hopefully, I'm sure somebody from the board could be there.
I'd be happy to go. So.
Thank them.
Okay, perfect.
Okay.
I've done my holidays for the year, so I'm allowed. I could probably make it.
Thanks, Chris.
Okay. Operational report. Deputy Chief.
Morning all. A long meeting, so I'll try to get through some. There are some things I really do want to highlight this month though, but in addition to the regular stuff. So just kind of the stuff we always cover off. Overarching, there were 705 occurrences for June. and that's up from 682 in May. So May was busy, June was busier as far as calls for service. Overall charges and arrests, 117 criminal charges were laid in June, and 48 arrests were made, which was up from 45 in May. Like I usually like to highlight some of our more key occurrences. Intimate partner violence cases, we're at 16 this month, which is up from 13. Assaults, 14, which is up from 11. Family disputes were 12, which is up from 3. Bail violations, we were at 9. Break and enters, we had 3. Drug offenses were 4. And mischief, we were at 10, which is up from 7. And I'll speak about those just closer to the end. Mental Health Act calls, we were down significantly from May. May seemed to be an extra busy month for mental health calls for us at 37. We had 18 in June with 1 apprehension. We had no hospital wait time issues at all based on that 1 apprehension, and our MCERT nurses attended at 7 of those calls for us to assist. Traffic enforcement and complaints, we had 22 collisions in the month of June, 7 on private property and 15 on the highway. Our traffic related calls for services, we are at 149 total. Our officers conducted 97 vehicle stops proactively, and enforcement that arose from those, there was 57 charges laid from 31 of those traffic stops. So still doing quite a bit of proactive traffic work, trying to keep us safe. Charges obviously, as most months I talk about, relate to speeding, stop signs, traffic light infractions, general offenses that we normally see, careless driving. And there was 9 charges laid under the Compulsory Automobile Insurance Act. We did have a significant uptick in criminal charges relating from traffic stops. We had 24, which was up from 5 in May. Some of those charges are this isn't an all-encompassing list, but some of them were operation motor vehicle while prohibited, mischief over 5,000, impaired driving, flight from police, assault peace officer with a weapon, dangerous operation of a motor vehicle, and failed to stop after an accident. So, disturbing uptick there in criminal charges, but it also just speaks to how our officers are out there proactively finding things when they're out on patrol and trying to deal with the things they come across. For proactive policing, we had 25 hours of foot patrol registered, 22 hours of our school visits. Our officers up until this is from the end of the school. Obviously, that'll come down significantly next month now that the schools are done. But they're trying to get into the schools on at least every shift and visiting and making contact in there and having some positive relationships within the schools. 56 hours of community service and 12 hours of bike patrol. Our strategic enforcement traffic priority for May was vehicle equipment offenses, and there were 6 charges related to that initiative. And those were like things such as obstructed window, no muffler, failed to display 2 plates, charges such as that. So, and the step target for July will be impaired driving and alcohol offenses. As always, too, I'd like to highlight our top traffic enforcers for the month of June, which was Constables Gauthier, Sly, and Robideau. Criminal Investigations Branch report. Obviously, we have one of our detectives embedded with the OPP that are continuing with the Bertram file and assisting the OPP Criminal Investigations Branch with that project. Their detective was involved in a significant fraud investigation, which I will have a further report on for the month of July. We've had a child luring case where production orders were sought and granted, and there was another child luring case involving a teacher that our detective's been working on, and I'll have a further report on that for the month of July. Those 2 have both wrapped up, as well as the fraud. We assisted again in Aquay Police Service with their Friday the 13th Outlaw Motorcycle Gang event. We always send down at least 2 or 3 officers to support them in that event, and they assisted with intel gathering and traffic control. The firearms search warrant execution at Main Street West address that I will highlight a little bit here later on, and ongoing intelligence gathering regarding drug trafficking locations in our town. Our community service officer, Constable Keoghan, who was highlighted earlier this morning, has been extremely busy as always. ensuring that several routine school visits were conducted. He also assisted doing frontline patrol for us when we needed somebody to fill in, and that included 8 hours of bicycle patrol. This was highlighted earlier by the chief in this morning's meeting. He did the heavy lifting on the Yippee program between him and Constable Dewey and Staff Sergeant Wilson. They screened, interviewed 16 applicants, and eventually hired the 4 that you met today, and that was done in very, very short order. So that took a significant amount of time, and they did a great job getting that program up and running. On basically, it was a short notice for us, but things are moving ahead. I attended the rural fetal alcohol syndrome event at Lower Reach Park, and there was over 700 students in attendance. So that was a very positive interaction that we were able to have with all the students there. I attended the torch run events for the final leg in Ottawa. He represented us. I'll have some pictures to highlight that later on. Helped out with the Special Olympics golf tournament, which was a significant success. And as we heard earlier as well, did a lot of work at our powwow event for us. And he continues with his media updates and Facebook posts to promote Smith Falls Police Service throughout. Just the criminal record checks there. I don't have to go over those. Those are just like to keep you up to date with those each month. Courses and workshops. These are some of the things that we've been sending our officers on in the month of June. We had 2 officers attend the Police Bicycle Patrol Operator course in Ottawa, which is a 4-day course, and they're both trained up now and able to hit the streets on the bicycle for us. We sent some people on a power case training and managing investigations course for civilian download and stuff, which helps us significantly with the administrative end of entering tombstone information into our power case reporting system. Constable LeMay was able to attend the forensic entomology workshop in Aylmer, and we sent Constable Hart on the coach officer course in Cornwall. As always, too, I like to highlight how engaged our officers are in our community, doing various things. This first slide deck basically shows a lot of our work with for the Torch Run and Special Olympics, which is obviously an organization that's near and dear to all our hearts, and we do what we can to support them at every turn. These are just some of the pictures from some of the events, such as the golf course, and you see in the lower left, that was the tolls. Special Olympic tolls. I was talking to Constable Keoghan this morning, and between the tolls and the run itself, we were able to raise $19,500, which I'm told is a record. So pretty proud of the work they do for the Special Olympics, and we're really happy to be behind that. Next picture, I think we alluded to that earlier, was the powwow. Pretty sure Constable Keoghan had more fun at that than anybody. But some great photos there, and we were really, the chief and I were both honored to be part of the grand entrance along with the board chair. It was a really nice day and really good to engage and interact with all the people there. It was a really successful event. So we as the Smith Falls Police Service as a whole, we're glad to support that, and hopefully they'll be back next year, and we'll be right there with them. So the board chair wanted me to put this one in. You can see him at the back. He was the star of the game, I'm told. But this was the community living baseball game that several of our officers, as well as a bunch of the firefighters and stuff, attended. And Chair Panko was there as well. And I understand it was a hugely successful day and a lot of fun and lots of positive feedback.
We got beat pretty bad.
Yeah, pretty well. Yeah, we don't have to get into the details. Hey, it was just a great day. So it's just again, though, something our officers are really big on supporting our community and doing those types of events. So anytime we get a chance, we're happy to do it. I just want to cover off one major event that happened in June. We had a criminal code search warrant executed at a Main Street West apartment. Our Criminal Investigations Bureau had received information regarding an individual who was in possession of an unauthorized firearm and ammunition at the residence. So an investigation was undertaken with a bunch of surveillance and the typical workup that we would do in order to secure a criminal code search warrant. On the June 4th, it was executed. Several of our members were able to assist with the search warrant execution, including the surveillance leading up to the actual execution of the warrant, the arrest, the ident, and the scene processing. The accused was arrested without incident when they left the apartment on foot, and seized was a taser, spring-loaded edged weapon, various rifle and shotgun rounds, and there was numerous charges related to firearms and ammunition issued. So if we go to the next one, so that was just what was seized, what was located. So kind of concerning that kind of things are floating around in our downtown core in somebody's apartment that shouldn't have that. So I think our officer did a great job in taking the initial information and building it up and executing a successful warrant and laying the appropriate charges. So just kind of an idea, but we are seeing a bit of an uptick in firearms and firearm seizures. And I have another case to talk about that happened in July for next month too, but we're definitely seeing more firearms out on the street and stuff. So it's a little bit concerning, but we are, when we do get that type of information, we take it very seriously and we try to act on it as quick as we can to try and secure the firearm and hold the people accountable that have them. So the last slide I want to touch on is from the operation standpoint. I'm seeing a kind of an unfortunate uptick in assaults against our police officers. You'll see in the month of June, there's been 8 assault police charges laid and 2 resist arrests. Now, I will say that some of those stem from the same incidents, but I can say kind of overarching that, and it goes back to the occurrences that I talked about earlier, having like the family disputes, the IPVs, the assaults, the mischiefs, what I tend to call not violent occurrences, but occurrences of anger or people being upset and just kind of in a bad place. We've seen an uptick in those, and I think that's parlaying over to our officers responding to those each and every day, and then just then the proliferation of the assaults. So I wanted to bring this to the board's attention because I'm not sure we give our officers enough credit for going out there every single day and doing the work that they do bravely. We're a young force, and we're putting our officers, so we're asking them to go into some pretty tremendously dangerous situations, and they're doing their best, and they're basically, you know, getting assaulted, they're getting kicked, they're getting spit on and elbowed and punched, and I'm just like to ask people how often they would go back to the office each and every day if they knew there was a high probability that they might get assaulted that day or kicked or spit on. It's not the greatest environment out there, and I'm not, you know, I understand we have a tough job. I just really want the board to understand that we are seeing an uptick. It's concerning. I'm also trying to work with our Crown attorneys, who we have a great relationship with, but I'm hoping that they can start taking these occurrences a little, I don't saying they're not taking it seriously, but that there's a little more repercussion, because I think it's getting, in my opinion, just a little bit too easy to push back against the police or be assaultive during arrest time. So I just wanted to highlight just a couple here. I'm not going to get into the minutiae of it, but these are calls like a trespass to property complaint. Our officers arrived, the male was uncooperative and combative. This person was in a shed, and the owner wanted them removed, but they refused to leave. Our officers showed up, tried all the tactical communication. It turned assaultive very quickly. The pepper spray was issued, ineffective. There was multiple taser deployments, and the officers ended up getting punched and kneed in the face and kicked in the kneecap while trying to bring that individual that was in crisis under arrest again, be able to remove. So you think might be just a simple trespass call, and it turned into quite a melee. Another was a mischief call. There was a teenager out of control destroying the family house. Our officers arrived and attempted to de-escalate the subject, who remained combative throughout, and the officer was kicked in the chest and the genitals during the arrest before it could be completed, and that person was taken into custody. We had a call about a belligerent customer at a local restaurant that was causing a problem inside the restaurant. The officers arrived, and during the execution of the arrest, they were kicked and spit on repeatedly. And then following day, that's when the subject was removed from the cells that was in our custody to try and turn over to the prisoner transport unit to get to court. I believe it took 5 or 6 officers to bring that person under control. They were spit on, and they had urine-soaked toilet paper thrown on them. So, and I say this because, you know, sometimes I feel we don't tell people what it's really like out there, and I just really would ask that if the board could find it in their heart to show some, I'm not saying you're not supportive, but to come up with something as a board to show your support to our officers, whether that be through a letter, through our association, that you understand the impact of what's going on out there. I think that would go a long way for especially our younger officers, because I really think they're up against it. And I'm not here looking for a cookie or a badge for them. I don't think we stand up here enough and say, this is every day. I already have 3 assault police occurrences to talk about for July, and I am going to highlight every month because I think it's important. I just want you guys to know that we're proud of the work they're doing every day, and I just want to give the board a little glimpse into what it's like out there for us. So anyway, barring any questions, that's my
Okay.
report. So thank you.
Thank you, Deputy. Any questions other than, yeah, our support to the service, our hearts go out to them, and we know that at times it's a very difficult job, and we're proud of the work they do.
Yeah, and I think if that got conveyed, to them here somehow, somewhere, we talk more support for yourselves, I do think it would go a long way, so, for sure. So, and I would appreciate it as well, so.
Okay,
Thank you.
Okay. So that's the operational report. Our next meeting is scheduled for September 16th.
Yeah, if I could ask the board about that date, I just was advised a couple days ago of a small and mid chiefs meeting. It happens 3 or 4 times a year, and it's happening on the same day as our board meeting in London. And it's a really good opportunity for myself to be a part of the voice, and especially nowadays with the new act and speaking with the provincial government on the changes is being a voice. So I just wondered if there's any way of changing that date for the board and the deputy chief is on holidays that day. If there was another option, even the following week, I don't know if that would work for the board.
Anyone have an issue with the 23rd?
Nope.
No?
I apologize on that. Sometimes they don't
I
book
can
these.
confirm with Andrew as well. I can just send him an email.
Okay, 23rd, I think, okay, let's, as long as it's works for Andrew, then let's go with the 23rd.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Okay. Okay. Anything further? If not, ask for motion for adjournment. Moved by Chris, seconded by Rob, all in